Greetings, fellow EFCA worship leaders. My name is Paul Dacey, and I am a creative arts pastor at a free church in New Hampshire. And I wanted to let you know about an EFCA worship leader podcast that I am producing and co hosting. Now, the goal of the podcast is to connect us and to encourage us and to inspire us in the roles that we carry out in our local churches. Now, while our ministries may be diverse in location and in size and in culture, the questions that we ask and the problems that we run into are remarkably similar. So, as we interview EFCA worship leaders all over the country, hopefully something that they say will spark an idea in you and maybe, just maybe, help carry your ministry down the path a little bit further. Now, the podcast is available both in video and audio formats, and please let me know if this is something that you'd like to be a part of in episodes to come. Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Dacey. I'm one of the pastors out here in New Hampshire at a free church, and I'm excited to bring to us the EFCA Worship Leader Podcast. This is the first one that we're doing, and part of the goal was to do what those three words at the top of the screen says, to help to connect us, to encourage us, and to inspire us. As worship leaders, we're all struggling with the same stuff, and we're fighting the same battles, and hopefully the purpose of this is maybe to pick brains of other worship leaders that are out there. Maybe they've figured out a nugget that you just haven't wrapped your head around yet, and they could just help you down the path a little bit further. So like I said, my name is Paul Dacey. Nate Carter is here. Nate and I are going to be talking with Charlie Flack, and we're going to be picking his brain today. So why don't we start with this? Charlie, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're serving?
Yeah, I'm serving at a church called Spring Lake Church in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And a little bit about my past is been in worship ministry for over 20 some years now, and just been blessed to be a part of multiple churches along the way, working with them from being on staff to consulting to being on staff at this church where I'm at right now, Spring Lake, and it's a great church. So, yeah.
So what drew you to worship ministry?
You know, passion for music has always been there. And when I was in my later teens, early 20s, God just really got a hold of my heart. And that passion not only stemmed from music, but ultimately just giving him praise, giving him worship through it, using music as a vehicle to worship and to honestly teach theology through song. And I never looked at it as a full-time thing. I was a volunteer at a church for quite a few years, helping do a contemporary service. And I had a gentleman show up one day after the Saturday night service and said, "Hey, I'm starting a school of ministry down the road, and would you be interested in looking at that?" And I never thought about full-time ministry. That wasn't really anything that I pursued. But this gentleman said, "I see some potential in you, and I just want to have a conversation." And through that conversation, I was working full-time through a 2-year internship, and then went through a 2-year school of ministry at the church, and ended up in full-time ministry. It was really a God thing, honestly. It's an amazing, when I look back, it's amazing who God puts in your life, and helps you through different things to get him where he wants you to be. So
You said you've been doing this for 20 some odd years. A question I always like to ask people is, man, what do you know now that you wish you knew then in worship ministry?
Wow. Oh man. Starting off in ministry, I think there's so many facets to it. But having a baseline, having a biblical philosophy of worship is really important. It's really important to keep focused, but also to organize what you do. And I think that's a big thing. Looking at, there's quite a few out there, but having a a philosophy of how to introduce songs, how to make sure that you're impacting your congregation, to song order, to song roster. So there's that facet. But I think that one of the biggest things is building a community with your teams. And my early on building, looking at ministry, looking at volunteers, and I think one of the things that I've seen God really work in more than anything is when you foster a community that is like a family. It's not just about showing up on the weekend. It's not just about making sure they're there for a rehearsal, but it's even outside of that. And so for me, that was something that I wish I would have known really early on, to make sure I was purposefully building a community for the volunteers where it's like a family. Yeah.
Let's
Extended
flesh
family.
that. Let's flesh
Yeah.
that out a little bit more, because in talking earlier, both Nate and I were struck with this idea of like how are you caring for yourself, and how are you caring for others? How do you care for your team?
Yeah, maybe talk a little bit about what that community looks like, how, just the nuts and bolts of what it looks like to build community with your team.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think depending on where you're at within ministry, I was a part of plant churching for a long time. I was part of a couple churches that were very large, mega churches too, but then getting into the church planting realm, starting from zero, starting from scratch, to where I think you start off as you want to be purposeful in your recruiting. And when you're recruiting, you're not just looking for the most talented person in the room. You're looking for a person who has the right heart, who has the right heart for ministry, for ministering to people. And I think that's a key thing, because early on, I think I was always looking for people who were always hitting the bar right off the top. And when it comes to musicality, but heart is more important. The heart of the person is so important. And building on that foundation of looking at the people that you're bringing into this ministry is to me the biggest thing is the heart for worshiping the Lord. Secondary, music, right? And so when you start with that foundation, I feel like it's an easy foundation to start building off of, because you don't have to worry too much about situations that can hurt your team. And I would say when you have someone who volunteers who are in your ministry, who are looking at shepherding and loving on each other, it almost happens organically. And I think so. I think it's the purpose of recruiting and making sure that you have the right people coming into the ministry, and sharing with them, hey, it's not about you. This isn't about me. This is about ministering to to the people of this church, and having them go out and also start recruiting. And they know people, and they are interacting with people. There's in a large church, I call it the green room effect, where you can get into this green room effect thing where your team just stays in the green room. And it's not necessarily something that people do deliberately. I think it's just something that can happen. And I'm always trying to make sure our team is out in the congregation with the people that they're ministering to. And through that, they get to know people, they see people, they get to have conversations with people, and you find out, hey, this person played the keyboard when they were young, and but they thought, hey, I never thought I could play for a music team, or the worship ministry. And I'm a big component. One of my biggest components with auditioning is there's never a make it or break it. It's just, where are they? It's a placement test. And if they have the right heart, and you take them into this through this audition process, you get to see their heart, you get to see where they're at, and then you start helping and build them. And so to me, when you have the right people into the ministry with the right heart, doing the right things, following biblical principles, it kind of happens organically to where. they care for themselves. So
Can I ask you a little bit about just having the people with the right heart? Because that's an awesome thing to be able to build, but a lot of times you're starting into ministry and you're inheriting a team.
yes.
And so how have you navigated, inheriting a team that people don't necessarily have the right heart, and you got to deal with that already in the culture?
Yes. There have been quite a few times where coming into a ministry, I feel like it's an opportunity. I feel like it's an opportunity to come in and you almost have to start over. And I've shared that with teams. In fact, the church where I'm at right now, when I first came in, I really didn't want to do much up for about three months. I think it's important to understand culture. I think it's important to understand the how and the why. This is how we do it. This is why we do it, of the church. And so for probably the first 30 days, I'm just observing. I'm a part of it, but just more observing. I think it's always important to invest in the people that you're inheriting. I think to come in and just throw down some of these new philosophical things that you're like, this is what the ministry is about, this is what we're doing, but I don't really know you yet. I think there's time where you have to spend with the people that you're inheriting to be able to invest in them a little bit. And then when you understand how things are running and why they're running the way that they are, it's much more helpful to look at the people and understand where they're at. And then you can take that, if you have people who are struggling with the right heart, you're able to come alongside them and hopefully pour into them. Because sometimes they just, maybe they've been doing ministry for a really long time. This is how I've always done it. Well, that's great. That's great. But we would like to move in a different direction, or what I see is this, coming alongside people, I've found can really be a beneficial thing after you get to know them. Does it always work? No. I think there are times where it's unfortunate, sometimes with relationships, and trying to do change. Change always frustrates people, typically, sometimes. But I would say the higher percentage of people coming along with me, you want people to come along with you. You don't want to just run past them. You want to bring them along. And so I think that's a key element in that, is getting to know the team you're inheriting before you make any changes. Is that kind of what you were looking for, Nate? I hope.
Yeah, that's great. People are always asking that question in our worship leader network, and so I just thought having someone kind of speak to, what do you do with the guy that you inherited and can't seem to get rid of, and it's not working. So yeah, thanks.
I had a question for just to flesh out that a little bit more. What about yourself? What are some of the rhythms that you have in your own life to care for yourself, to protect yourself, to prepare yourself for the responsibilities that you have in training others and in encouraging and in leading a congregation on a Sunday morning?
Yeah. That's a big question. I'll start with this. One of the things that I love about Spring Lake is the senior pastor, Jack Herrera. He's very intentional about building ministries and volunteer base and empowering our volunteers to be leaders. I would not be able to do this ministry without my team leaders. And they are volunteers. They are people who I've seen along the way that they just really want to invest in this ministry, and bringing them along and saying, hey, I see this in you. Do you want to be more involved in a leadership capacity? And so what I try to do with that is get them involved, try to help not only shape that and help grow that, but I allow them to speak into me as well. Things that they see, things that maybe I'm missing. I really rely heavily on my team leaders. We meet depending on, there's so much that happens throughout the year. So I would say my goal is always to meet every other month with them. We get something to eat. Maybe it's breakfast, or Sunday after church, we do some lunch together, and have a fun time. We play worship fails, I think, is always a great way to start the meeting off, to share and celebrate worship fails. But what it does, it really brings the team leaders together. And we have around between in the worship department here, we have production and music. And through that, we have around 20 team leaders, if not maybe just a few more. But I think it started with 6. So you kind of keep building into that. And as you're building team leaders, it's super helpful to get that feedback of where the team is at. They know things about the team that you don't know about. And they're ministering to the team without you even knowing it, which is super helpful, but you're always just getting that feedback as well. Maybe some frustrations that are happening within the team that you're not aware of. So there's that. And I also have 3 people that I rely on who are holding me accountable, who I allow them to see things that are happening on a weekend basis. And I want them. I'm a feedback guy. I want to hear feedback. And sometimes truth and love hurts. It just does. But that's what helps shape us and mold us. And I feel like for me, having that feedback has been probably one of the biggest builders of my life. And not just in this ministry, but throughout ministry. I always try to find people who can really speak into me, who I trust to speak into me, who aren't going to just give me the great things. They're going to tell me the negative things. And I think that's important. And I think outside of that too, I'm always reading and YouTubing ways to get better at at leading teams, at leading worship, some music stuff. So I'm a guy who just I love that stuff. I love growing and learning. So one of my
What have you read lately? What's something did you recommend?
I just I'm taking my team through this right now, and I go through it probably every couple of years. It's I love it so much. It's Worship on Earth as It Is in Heaven. I've shared that at actually the EFCA thing conferences too, but Worship on Earth as It Is in Heaven is by Rory Nolan. And I had an opportunity to be around Rory Nolan and quite a few years ago, and such a humble man, and just so full of wisdom when it comes to things. And that book is it's more on personal, there's segments of it, but a lot of it is on your own personal time of worship, and making sure that you're diving into that, and make sure that you need to be at a place where you are worshiping before you can go out and lead someone in a place of worship. So you need to, I love that book. That is a great book for yourself or even a team approach.
When it comes to volunteers, because this is something that all worship leaders struggle with, always want to have an answer to, always want to pick other people's brains on. It's like, how do you find your volunteers, or how do you respond to that person that comes up to you on Sunday morning? Hey, I played the guitar and I'd like to join you. Like, how do I do that?
Ooh, yeah. Some really cool stories about that that I'll share. That one of the first church plants that I worked with, it was around 60-ish people, and it was just me on the acoustic when I showed up. And I'll never forget this. It's the fun cutest thing. And there was a mom with her daughter, and her daughter was like a freshman in high school, and her mom just kind of shoved her toward me, toward my way, and she was like, "Hi, my name is," and she was so sweet, and she said, I would love to be on the worship team. And I'm like, "Oh, really? What instrument do you play?" And she said, "I play the clarinet." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." And the different churches can, stylistically, depending on where you're at, maybe the clarinet is like, "Hey, we were missing that. That's great." For me, it was more of I was looking for more of a keyboardist, bass player, drummer, kind of electric guitar player. But I simply just asked her. I said, "Hey, the clarinet is great. So you know how to read music?" And she said, I do. And I said, "Would you be interested in learning the piano?" And she said, "Absolutely." And so what I ended up doing was taking her through a basic 101 piano course, and she took it and she ran with it. I mean, just ran with it. And so she became one of our number one keyboardists, and so sometimes I think when someone comes up to you, maybe it's not the instrument you're looking for, or needing at the time. Maybe just saying, "Hey, would you be interested in learning this? I will help you. I will give you every tool that I can think of to get you a place where you can functionally use this." And it takes a while. It's not like right off the start. 4 years later, she ended up doing a major as in music, and the piano became like, she still did the clarinet. That was like, but the piano was also her primary instrument. And so I got to go to her recital and see that, and so we laugh about that a lot. That was at a different church, but for me, that was trying to take people and move them into a place where I can help them get to what we need as a ministry. And I think that people will rise to the occasion if you ask them and help them along the way. The other thing is with recruiting. So that's if somebody approaches you. I don't know if that answered that question.
No, that was great. Yeah. But,
Okay.
but just in terms of general recruiting, like when you feel like you don't have all that you need, how do you go find people?
And I mean this, it's got to be a team approach. It's got to be a team approach. If you don't empower your team to help with this, you're going to miss some opportunities, in my opinion. So I really push our team to make sure they're out mingling, to make sure they're out talking with people, meeting new people, not just people they know, because you'll never know who you're going to meet. And from the mom who played piano when she was 12 years old to the guy who played the drums in a rock band when he was in his 30s and now in his 50s. There's so many opportunities for your team to interact with people and invite them in. And when your team invites them in, there's something special with that. There's something special that happens for that person immediately. So I'm always out mingling. I'm always out talking to people in our church, and from the lobbies. If there's someone new, I'm always introducing myself to them. But that gives you the opportunity to talk to them. And when they see you up on a platform, maybe leading worship, and they see the music, it can spark immediately a conversation. "Oh yeah, I played the bass in a jazz band in high school a long time ago." "Really? Well, we need a bass player." "Oh well, it looks like you have everything taken care of." "No, never. We will never have enough musicians on our team." I tell the people that all the time. And I'm like, let's just see if this is a great opportunity. Let's have coffee, or let's talk about this. And that's typically what I'll do. I think there's the personal invitation. Maybe it's from the leader of the ministry itself, and or a team leader or volunteer, whatever it is. But then what I do is I typically meet with them, and I take them through a booklet. I don't have one with me at the moment, but I take them through the booklet of what's expected within the ministry. I think the expectations are super important for people to understand what is expected of them coming into the ministry. And then also in that booklet, it teaches them philosophy as well, about where we stand and why we do what we do on a weekend service. And so I think I always do that first. So we also have an online application that people will fill out. Even if they fill that out, I never meet with them for an audition first. I always meet and go over that booklet first. And this is why. I've found that when you take people through that booklet and they see what the expectations are, they see the heart behind what you're doing, they see that it's going to be more than just showing up, and winging it. We're very intentional about what we do. And either they're going to love it or they're going to say, hey, I don't think this is necessarily for me. And that's okay. But I do think it's always important to move them into a different volunteer opportunity. I don't think you ever just say, okay, see ya. Move them into something else. If the time is maybe too much time for it, I'm not sure what the restraints might be for that, but always get them involved with something. But when you do that, then I say, pray about this, and then let me know if you want to take the next step. And the next step is an audition. So.
And that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, just that you're primarily concerned with people's heart.
Exactly.
And so if you start with the booklet, that's saying we're starting with the heart essentially, and then the ability or talent or gifting comes second.
Yeah. I think when people see expectations, mission, and vision and philosophy, they'll either, like you said, the heart behind it, it's going to be like, I'm in line with that or I'm not. And it's super, and it's great. That's great.
Is that a document that you've created, or is that something that your church has had, or would you make that available to someone who would be interested? They think that's a great idea. They don't have anything like that.
Oh, absolutely. I'll totally make that available in any way, shape, or form. That is something you went back to. That first question, I think, was,
what do you know now?
What do you know?
Wish you knew then. Yeah.
That taking people through that booklet of who the church is, what the worship ministry is, why we do what we do, the expectations, the philosophy. I wish I would have known to do that first, then take people through the audition process, because it does. It really, I don't want to say the word weed. I hate the word weeding out people, but it really helps focus the people who are coming onto your team. But yes, I did create that booklet. It's been years. It's been shaped over so many years, but I did create that. What I found is a lot of churches don't have a booklet like that. Some do, some don't. And so what I try to do is make sure when I come into the ministry, especially like even Spring Lake, they didn't have anything really like that. I shaped it. I sat down with the lead pastor or senior pastor, Jack Guerrera, and I said, hey, this is my heart behind this ministry. And they knew that hiring me in the first place, which was great. But I said, I really want to make sure that I shape this with Spring Lake in mind. And so we actually sat down and just he helped me tailor it a little bit more to the Spring Lake church philosophy as a whole, as a church ministry.
So
what's
your email if somebody wanted to reach out to you and maybe see a copy of that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Pastor Charlie, CHARLIE at springlakechurch.org. Charlie, or Pastor Charlie at springlakechurch.org. Yeah.
What a great nugget there. What does a typical week look like for you in your preparations for Sunday morning? Like, what is your rhythm in terms of song selection, or just, getting your tech stuff all tied up, creating documents that your team may need in terms of the flow of the service, the order of the service, whether you're setting up, you're lining up your pads, you're lining up whatever. What does your weekly rhythm look like?
So, like a Monday through Friday kind of thing, or Saturday? Yeah. Okay. So Monday, I typically take off. I take Mondays off. It works really well for my family. to take Mondays off. That's the day I feel like I can really unplug from ministry and focus on my family. But then Tuesday starts off. Tuesday, we, as a church, we have our staff meetings, and then we have production meeting. And production meeting, we're recapping from the weekend that we just had, and then talking about the next week, and even typically about 2 weeks out, just to kind of from a high level, the 2 weeks out. We focusing on the things that we celebrate from the weekend that we just had, but things that we can also do better with the weekends that we just had, but not really focusing too heavily on negatives. That meeting can immediately turn super negative and dive so far into the weeds of nuances, and what we're very intentional about making sure that, yes, we hit those things, and maybe there's out of the meeting we can have conversations to make things better, but they're talked about in that meeting. But the main thing is that we also celebrate what God's doing in our church, and how he's moving is really important. So we have that meeting, and so that's Tuesdays are usually filled up with a lot of meetings, which I'm thankful for, because then I get to Wednesday, and Wednesday is my flex day. That's where I would say I focus really kind of on connecting with people. Maybe it's a breakfast, maybe it's a lunch. And then also I'm meeting with people that are in the audition process. I call that the on-ramp. It's in Planning Center. We have people listed out. We have songs up there, and we call it the on-ramp in our team selection, so that way people never get dropped or lost. But so I'm typically meeting with people, and all of Wednesday, just trying to shape that community, but also help develop and grow our volunteers. Thursday, I typically spend the morning up until about 8 or 9, getting into a coffee house. There's a coffee house that I go to every single Thursday. They know me by name. They already have my order ready for me when I come walking in. Creature of habit, I guess. But that is when I sit down and I bring up one thing that the church we've been really focusing on and getting working on is getting ahead with our sermon schedules, and not just the scripture and the title and the theme and all that, but also the points and focus of what's going to be talked about. And that's usually about almost 3 weeks to 4 weeks out. So that has helped me tremendously with planning out our services to be more cohesive. To me, being a part of having the whole service be one big long message, it's all tied into each other. It's really important to me. That whole service is worship, and we want to really make it cohesive. And so we've really done that. So I bring up that spreadsheet that has all of the pastors and all of the scriptures to the points, focus points, which I'm going to let you guys know it has been 4 years in the development. So if you're like, hey, my church doesn't do that. Yeah, ours didn't either, and it was hard. It was really hard navigating that. And it's something where I'm thankful that our lead pastor has seen that and has kind of heard that from my heart to say, hey, it would be really great to get ahead. Plus, we have other pastors who really wanted to do that too. So it takes time. And be patient and love on your lead pastors, because they have a lot on their plates too. So, but through that, I bring up those spreadsheets. I bring up my rosters. I bring up Planning Center. We have 2 different campuses at the moment. We do identical services, but that doesn't mean that a female might be leading the same song at one campus and a male might be leading that at another at the other campus. But looking at my teams, we do a 3-month team scheduling block quarterly. So that's super helpful to know who your team is well in advance. They know for their work schedules as well. But I sit there and looking at studying the scripture, and looking at the focus points, looking at our roster, and looking at our team, and trying to put together services typically 2 weeks to 3 weeks out. I try to do that. It doesn't always work, but at least a minimum of 2 weeks out. So, and if we're introducing a new song, I make sure I put that up there, and we do a 3-1-1 rule. I'm not sure if that was a Matt Redman thing or Tim Hughes thing way back in the day. 3-1-1 rule for new songs: 3 weeks on, 1 week off, bring it back, see how it lands. So I always have that planned out in our planning center. One of the other things that I do is if we introduce a new song, I find as many tutorials or videos that fit that song. There are a lot of tutorials out there for songs. Some of them aren't that great. Some of them are, but I make sure I try to give the tools for our team to not only the MP3, but the guitar parts, to the bass, to the drums. Whether maybe it's just an MP3 from a multi-track, I kind of break that out so they can hear them, hear the parts. And I just make sure that all the tools are there for those songs to cut down their time during the weeks of practicing at home. But that's what I do on Thursday mornings. And then we have our meeting after that for the weekend service, just to tighten up things. So that's just the worship ministry as itself, with our tech director and a couple of our part-time worship leaders. So that's what we do. And then after that, I typically have another on-ramp person that I'm working with, building into for the audition through the audition process. Friday is another flex day for me, and where I might start a little bit later, depending on Thursday, how it goes. But Friday is the day where I'm really tightening up everything. I'm making sure that the team is ready, looking at notes, looking at making sure that if I'm leading, that I'm ready to go. But scripture's out, pro presenter's ready. Honestly, it's the dot the I's and cross the T's, or whatever you want to look at it, day where we're ready. We have a Saturday night service. So if you don't have a Saturday night service, maybe it'll look different for you. But Saturday morning, I want to be left alone. I want to make sure that I come in with my heart ready and prepared, not worrying about pro presenter, not worrying about the lights programming. But that's all typically done on Thursdays, but finalized on Fridays. So that's a little bit of a nugget.
Something I didn't hear in there, Charlie, was a rehearsal. Do you guys do all your rehearsal just before the service?
We do. So one of the things that when I first got to church, we did a midweek rehearsal, and it was so hard on the team, so hard. And
is that because you have a Saturday night and a Sunday morning already? So it's just like one more day for them?
I think it's just life. We have people who are on the worship. So this is what I found, is that if you do a midweek rehearsal, it's good for some people, and some people look forward to it. Others work at night. Others are, and so they can't necessarily be there and or really be involved. So what I've found over the years to do is try to move them, give them the tools that they need to prepare for during the week. Right now, if somebody I say this with my team all the time. If you are struggling with anything, let me know, and I will meet with you at any time during the week, or someone will. If I'm not available, someone will meet with you and work through some stuff. I never want them to come into our Saturday rehearsal before service and go, oh, I was really struggling with this part. It's too late. We want to make sure that we set you up well. So if they're ever struggling, they can, I'll make time during the week to meet with them, and we'll work together one-on-one, and which really helps a lot. But when I first got here, we had that midweek rehearsal, and there were people who just really, honestly, couldn't be a part of it, and or they weren't here. And when you don't have your full team there, number one, it looks bad for the people who are there. I feel like it doesn't go well, because then when they show up for the practice before the service, they're there. That's great, but I don't feel like it's fair to the rest of the team members. So what I've found that works well is giving them the tools to do practice throughout the weeks, but then coming into a rehearsal before the service strong rehearsal, they have to come in knowing their parts. That's my biggest thing. And that's one of the, in that booklet, you have to come in knowing your parts. You have to come in strong and ready and prepared. And I told my team, or this team here, when I first started, if you guys do that for the midweek rehearsals, we can move it to the weekend or before service. And they were like, really? And I'm like, yeah, but you have to come in strong. And man, the level of playing and just like skyrocketed so that they could have another day throughout them, because some people had small groups, some people had family activities. So when you're doing midweek rehearsal, I feel like it's this day and age, it's hard, you know. But if you give people the tools, they will rise to the occasion to be ready for the weekend service if you do a rehearsal before your service. So that's what I found. They would rather get there early on Sunday morning, super early. You know, we get there at 6:15 at our downtown campus on Sunday morning because we don't have a Saturday service. But they'll get there early on Saturday. We have a 3:30 call time for a 6 p.m. service. So yeah. That was long. Sorry.
Such
problem.
good stuff. Nate, any more
Yeah.
questions for Charlie?
No, that's great.
Charlie, this has been so good. I appreciate you taking the time and really sharing some of the wisdom that you've gained over the years. I've got one more question for you, just so that we can just get to know you a little bit better. Would you rather meet your great grandkids or your great grandparents? And why?
Oh my gosh.
That's a great question.
Oh, that's deep, man. I'm gonna. I would say my grandkids, just to see if I prepared my children well. Yeah. Oof. I like to do both. That'd be great. But probably my grandkids. Yeah. Right? Is that what you said?
Great grandkids or great grandparents?
Yeah, great grandkids. Yeah. I'd say my great grandkids. Yeah.
All right. Outstanding. Again, thank you so much for taking your time. For anybody who wants to reach out to Charlie, which is Pastor Charlie at springlakechurch.org. If you want to ask him any more questions about some of the stuff that he shared, or you want to copy that document that he's created. But we are looking forward to doing this on a monthly basis, picking the minds of EFCA worship leaders around the country. So if you're interested, reach out to us. And but thank you so much, you guys, for your time. And I look forward to hearing you guys, maybe meeting up again at a conference and learning more from these podcasts about what God is doing around the country and the free church with these worship leaders. So thanks again.
Thank you, guys. This is great.